is working. All right. In terms of this, I'm now going to say the kindest thing I have ever said about Fox News and Roger Ailes, who's the chair of Fox News. I have never said a kind word about Fox News or Roger Ailes, and this is maybe the last kind word I ever give about Roger Ailes. Are you ready? Roger, are you ready? Fox? I want to congratulate you guys for standing up to Donald Trump. I mean, here we go. Donald Trump, one of the things I like to do with our time together is to give you a kind of a sense of the story behind the story. And obviously a big story today, the Republican campaign debate, primary debate is tonight, and the biggest story around is that Donald Trump has decided not to attend. But there's a story behind the story. Obviously, he's not attending because he didn't want to be questioned by Megyn Kelly. He didn't like the way she questioned him at the Republican debate in August. But the story behind the story is that Donald Trump is all about control and power. I mean, this is important to understand. His underlying selling point, what he is selling the people who are buying Donald Trump, he's saying, I am in control. If you elect me, I will be in control of America, and I will have power, and I'll do what I am promising you will do, which is to protect you and make America great again and all that stuff. But control and power are critically important to Donald Trump. And he is asserting control over this situation. He's saying, I don't even have to go, and I have control and power over Fox News. Now, Fox News could have backed down. It did not. I'm glad it's going forward. Donald Trump is not going to be there. And there's a lot of political analysis of whether this is good for Trump or bad for Trump. I think that basically it does illustrate his theme of being in control and having power. But it also illustrates something else, which is that he is the most unqualified person to run for president in certainly my lifetime. And I'm getting old. What I mean by that is a president, somebody who is president, at the very least, has got to respect the independence of the press, the media. We depend on that independent media. Can you imagine if Donald Trump is president, please bear with me, and he says, okay, I'm having a White House sort of conference, I'm going to have a news conference, but the only news agencies that are going to be invited are those who have said nice things about me. And beware any news outlet that ever criticizes me because I'm going to cut you off. Can you imagine? That's called a dictatorship. And Donald Trump, part of what he is selling, although he doesn't say it like this, is that he is selling just what Mussolini sold, just what fascists sell, just what Hitler sold, just what Huey Long and some of the authoritarian figures in American history have sold, and that is a dictatorship. That is attractive to people that feel that the government is not listening. At least a dictator is better than a government that's working for just them, the oligarchy. Although Donald Trump is part of the oligarchy, he's saying, no, he's not. He will be a dictator for you, the people. I think it's important that people understand all of this. Fox News, by the way, one little parenthetical, in the late 90s, when Roger Ailes was starting Fox News, they came to me several times to not only appear on Fox News, but also to host Fox News. Did you know that I hosted Bill O'Reilly's program when Bill O'Reilly was not available on vacation or whatever it was, a number of times? I was Bill O'Reilly on Fox News. Seriously. I was a guest very often on Sean Hannity's. We disagreed, obviously, agreed about anything. But those were the everything. Those were the days when Fox News really did try to be a slightly larger tent before it veered right, when it had a slight claim to be fair and balanced. It was never fair and balanced. And then one day in the late 1990s, I was on Sean Hannity's program, and he asked me a question, and I said, because it was so obvious that it was such a baited, barbed, snide, negative question, I said something about Fox Republican News. It just came out. Couldn't help it. I said Fox Republican News. And during the station break, during the commercial break, Sean Hannity came into my earpiece, screamed at me He said, "How dare you do that?" And I said, "I'm going to say what I want to say." That was the last time I ever was invited to appear on Fox News. And goodbye forever, Fox News. Bill O'Reilly accused me a couple of years ago of being a communist. He can say whatever he wants. All right. Now on to Bernie and to Hillary. Several of you have written in mentioning and asking me about something I said or wrote this week, and I want to make sure you understand. I said that Hillary Clinton, in my view, I've known her since she was 19 years old, Hillary Clinton would be the best president for the political system we now have. And Bernie Sanders, I said, would be the best president to get the political system we should have. And what I mean by that is that you're hearing a lot of pundits, a lot of the commentariat talk about Hillary as being pragmatic and Bernie Sanders being the idealist. And that's really not the case. What we have here are two people that are really symbolizing and representing two very, very different things. Hillary would be an exceptionally good president, assuming that there's no change, assuming that the trends toward a greater and greater concentration of income and wealth and political power continue to move in the direction they've moved toward greater and greater concentration at the top. Assuming that we have and continue to have Republican Congress, and we have, therefore, a great deal of gridlock, and assuming there's not very much that can be done, and assuming that the next president, if it's a Democratic president, can't do much more or anything more than Barack Obama has accomplished, at least since the Affordable Care Act when the Democrats ran Congress. But I think that that may be aiming too low in the sense of what the system could be. And if we have any prayer of changing our political economic system, it's with a mobilization of Americans who are not only mobilized, but they're organized and they are energized to take back our political system from the oligarchy that now runs it, and also, therefore, and thereby take back our economy so that it's not basically rigged for the benefit of the people at the top. And the person who is talking about doing that, who could do that, and will do much more after next Monday and then after the following Tuesday, the Iowa and the New Hampshire primaries, is Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is leading a movement. And that's the fundamental difference between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And I know them both and I respect them both. Bernie is leading a movement for change. Hillary is basically campaigning for president as the system now is, and she'd be very good. In fact, she'd be excellent as president of the system that now is. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Does that make sense? And the other thing I want to say is it would be really self-defeating for all of us who care about the future of this country to get into a position where psychologically we are unable to work for the other Democrat who survives. That is, if it turns out that Bernie Sanders is the candidate, all of you who are Hillary Clinton supporters, I really want you. You're going to be needed. You're going to have to be mobilized and organized, and you really do need to be part of that movement. And the same thing goes if it turns out that Hillary Clinton is the nominee. All of you who are now Bernie Sanders supporters, who don't think that Hillary really is doing enough or bold enough or you can trust her, you're going to have to understand in context the alternative is somebody like Trump or Cruz or one of these other clowns. And we can't afford that. The country can't afford that. I mean, we have probably in the next 8 years, given that a typical president these days now is 8 years, 2 terms, we're going to have at least four Supreme Court justices who leave. Just talking in terms of lifespans and actuarially the typical lifespans. That means the next president will have control over the appointments to the next Supreme Court. The next president, it's vitally important that we keep in perspective what we need to do. Anyway, enough said, which actually segues into the point I wanted to make about voting. Now, I am privileged to be surrounded every day here at Berkeley, and when I go to other college campuses, University of Texas or University of Chicago, where I've been over the past 6 months, surrounded by young people between the ages of 18 and 25. And they keep me believing, and they keep me idealistic, and I consider it a true privilege. Because since, well, actually, over the 35 years that I have been teaching in universities, at Harvard and at Brandeis and here at the University of California, Berkeley, I have never encountered a generation of 18 to 25-year-olds who are as idealistic, as motivated, as determined to give back, as excited about public service as the ones who are now 18 to 25. And if you can't be optimistic about that, I don't know what planet you're on. But they are cynical about politics. I don't blame them. I understand the cynicism. But I want to speak to them, and I also want to speak to you, even if you are not in the 18 to 25 bracket. You have got to vote. You've got to caucus. You've got to be politically active, not just over the next 6 months, but also over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. If you're cynical and you believe that our politics can't be changed or can't be fixed, or you don't want to participate in it, that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then the moneyed interests win. They win it all. They want you to be cynical. They want people not to participate. They would be delighted if everybody said, oh, okay, take it. It's yours. Because then they really do have control, more than they've ever had before. So I, from the bottom of my heart, I ask you, take part in these primaries, take part in these caucuses. If you know anybody in Iowa or New Hampshire, even if you are not a citizen there, if you know anybody in South Carolina, in Nevada, in the Super Tuesday states, call them, get them involved, make sure that they understand the issues. We are all going to be directly affected by the consequences of what happens over the next 6 to 8 months. All right? You with me? Good. Questions? Here are your questions. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes on questions. Shervin Ashvari, is this the most important race ever, the most important election ever? Well, I don't know that it's the most important election ever. My first election where I was really active, running around the country, was 1968. And you may remember, some of you old-timers, Eugene McCarthy was running to end the Vietnam War. He was the candidate who was pledged to end the Vietnam War. He got Bobby Kennedy involved in running. And I, at that time, thought that was the most important race. And still, looking back on 1968, given what was at stake for the country, I could probably make a case that this year is as important as 1968. But this is really important. Critically important. I mean, look at the environment. Look at foreign policy. Look at what's happening to widening inequality in the United States. Look at issues of Black Lives Matter and police brutality and mandatory sentencing. All of the things that we need to worry about in terms of making sure we have a society that's working for everyone, a society that actually is a model to the world, are coming to a head right now. Next question. Steve Wright, did you see that Hillary is talking about putting Obama on the Supreme Court? Didn't you suggest that 6 months ago? Steve, I did suggest it 6 months ago, and I'm glad that Hillary is talking about it. I think Barack Obama, President Obama, would be an excellent Supreme Court candidate. There's one Supreme Court candidate, actually Supreme Court Justice, who had been a president before. Quiz. Can you name? What was the Supreme Court candidate? No, Supreme Court Justice who had been a president before he became a Supreme Court Justice. I'll get back to that if I remember. In the meantime, don't Google it. Just think about it. It's a quiz. Okay, Reed Mathis. Do you believe that Bernie and Donald share common populist roots? Reed, it's interesting. When I was on my book tour a couple of months ago, And in Middle America, in the Midwest, in the South, a lot of red states, I kept on coming in contact with people who said to me, we're trying to decide whether to support Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. And at first I was dumbfounded. I thought, these are opposites, not only opposite ends of the political spectrum, but opposite temperaments. I mean, they represent totally different things. But as I talked to people who I came in contact with, and again, these were many red states. These were people who described themselves as conservatives and Tea Partiers. What I came to understand is that they are so disenfranchised. They feel like the political and economic system is so much out of their control that and they also understand that they're on a downward escalator. They are losing ground. And they basically, and they don't put it this way, but in conversations, they essentially said to me, we either want a kind of an authoritarian, fascist-type person who's going to be such a tough guy that he basically eliminates everybody else and will get things done for us, or we want a movement activist who is going to bring us all together and change the political system so that we count. And that's really what's motivating the passions in much of America right now, and the reason that we have so many people who are, they may be more authoritarian, that's true, in terms of their personalities and instinct, but they're gravitating to Trump, or alternatively, for very much the same reasons, although they're going in a completely opposite direction, they're gravitating to Bernie Sanders. Next question. Jessica Carson. Why is Texas Governor Greg Abbott continuing to go after Planned Parenthood even after the grand jury found Planned Parenthood innocent? Well, I think that Greg Abbott, like some other politicians, I mean, it's Carly Fiorina is still going after Planned Parenthood on that tape recording, which was found to be basically faked. In terms of the allegation Planned Parenthood was selling fetal tissue. Notwithstanding that, the Texas grand jury's finding that was untrue, the Republicans are still making hay on this. It is political cynicism, and they are using sort of the genuine concern that a lot of religious conservatives have about when life begins, and that is a legitimate point of controversy. I mean, I respect people who think that life begins from conception. I believe that they are wrong, but they are entitled to their belief. But the politicians are exploiting that in terms of going after Planned Parenthood and creating these kinds of political controversies and tempests. And the danger, by the way, is that if you defund, and a lot of states are moving to defund Planned Parenthood, if you defund Planned Parenthood, what happens is that a lot of poor women who need contraceptive services, they need cancer screening, they need a lot of medical advice, they're not going to be able to get it. And that, to me, is just unconscionable. Nicole Barrasso. If Bernie is elected president, what would the impact be on the economy? Well, it's very hard to tell, Nicole. As you know, the economy is not doing very well right now. I could make a very strong argument that if Bernie is elected president and he has half a chance of putting into place policies that grow the middle class rather than shrink the middle class, and the middle class is now shrinking, but if you put in policies that grow the middle class, low-cost health care because it's a single-payer plan, free higher education, and so forth. More money is in middle-class pockets, and that's good for the economy because then people can buy stuff, and they can have better lives, and the economy will grow. One of the problems with the economy right now, the reason that the economy is slowing, and the stock market is reflecting that, certainly, is that there's not enough purchasing power in the middle class. So you need policies that grow the economy from the middle out, from the bottom out, and not trickle down. We've had trickle-down economics. It's a farce. It is a joke. Thank you. What's your next book going to be about? Peter, I don't know exactly. I never know exactly until I start writing it, and I've started writing it a little bit. I'm thinking about, now don't share this with anybody, Peter, all right? Okay? Just between us. I'm thinking about a memoir of my life in politics and some personal stuff as well. And I'm gonna. And my working title is Coming Up Short. What do you think? All right. Next question. Joshua Mansky, what do you think of a corporate tax cut for businesses that provide a living wage, paid family and sick leave, and a retirement pension? Well, if there's going to be any special corporate tax cuts or special business categories, it seems to me absolutely right. What you want to do is reduce taxes for businesses that do provide living wages, paid family and sick leave, retirement pensions, that kind of do a number of things that they don't have to do legally, but do it because they feel themselves good corporate citizens or they want to be good to their employees. And that kind of a tax cut makes sense because it makes it more financially feasible for these businesses to do this. A different section of the tax code, a kind of different. We already have what are called B corporations right now. You don't hear much about them, but under many state laws, companies can organize themselves as benefit corporations that can do a lot of things for their employees and for their communities, and not suffer the potential for a fiduciary and a kind of lawsuit that accuses them of breach of fiduciary duties to their shareholders. But your idea, I think, would be financially even better. Sharon Marconi, are we heading into a recession? Sharon, don't listen to any economic forecasters, because economic forecasters, as I've said before, exist to make astrologers look good. But there's reason to worry. I think that there is a 30% chance of a recession over the next year. And I say that because, as I said last week, we don't have enough aggregate demand in the system. Not only are consumers don't have the purchasing power, but you have the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, which is really dumb, and you have the Congress that is still, buying this snake oil of austerity economics. And of course, exports are down because China and Europe and much of the developing world is in or near recession. So I'm not bullish on where the economy is going. I wish I could be more positive about it. Steve Usher, I see a lot of skepticism in regard to how will Bernie pay for all his plans. Can you explain? Steve, that skepticism comes, I think, from people that are not looking at the benefit side of the equation. In other words, Bernie's single-payer plan would be more expensive than today's Affordable Care Act or what we have today, but the savings of a single-payer plan are huge relative to what we have today. And we know that because most other advanced countries do have a single-payer plan. That means you're not paying private for-profit insurers for advertising and for marketing and for executive salaries, and you're not paying 30 cents on the dollar for all of that that administrative stuff, the billing costs and so forth. So it's cheaper. So even though Bernie's single-payer plan is more expensive, at the end, if you deduct the savings, we come out way, way ahead. And that's true of everything else that Bernie is talking about, too. You've got to look not only at the cost side, but also at the benefit side, and the benefits exceed the costs. As far as every study I have seen, all of the solid numbers, and there are very solid numbers behind them. Tanya Jones, what do you say to those who don't believe Hillary is authentic and does what's politically expedient? Tanya, look, I have been around and worked for politicians for a lot of my life, and some of them are more authentic than others, but to be a politician and to be a successful politician, you've got to some extent, say what people want you to say or want to hear. And that means you're going to be pandering to some extent. Now, Hillary, I've known her again a very, very long time. I think I have enormous respect for her. I think she'll be a great president if she is elected, as I said before, in terms of the present system, rather than changing the present system. I think that she believes what she says in most cases, in many cases. But the only politician, there are very few politicians I've come across who I think actually, sincerely believe almost everything they say. I would put Bernie Sanders in that category. Eugene McCarthy, the first one who I said I went out campaigning for when I was 22 years old, really was in the same ballpark. He believed what he said. The other thing that needs to be said, I think, is that to run for president, you have got to have the thickest skin. You've got to, I don't know how people do it. I mean, you've got to have a degree of fire in your belly, or maybe it is just grandiosity. I don't know. I came across this little book, the quotations from Chairman Trump. It reminded me. This is one thing that Donald Trump said, apropos of what I just said about having enough, grandiosity. Trump said in announcing his run for president, I don't have to brag. I don't have to. Believe it or not. Enough said. All right, next question. Last question. This is the last question. Okay, Rima Regas. When do you sleep? Rima. Who needs sleep? I mean, I sleep. I get as much sleep as I need. Are you suggesting that what do you know about me, Rima, that I don't know? I sleep. I go to bed at a reasonable hour, and I get up fairly early. But there's a lot to do, Rima. I mean, there's a certain urgency. Don't you feel it? Rima? I mean, there's a lot we have to do, not only personally in terms of our jobs and our work, but this is Zoe reminds me my question about the Supreme Court justice that had been a president before. Obviously, the answer is William Howard Taft. He was a big man. He was big. All right. I want to remind you, next week at this time, we're going to do this again. And I want to thank my helpers, Zoe Beck and Yael Bridge. Yael, hope you're doing well. You're not here today. What happened? You're fired. No, you're not fired. That was my Trump personality coming out. Please, all of you, stay well. Participate, vote. This is an important caucus coming up Monday in Iowa, a very important primary coming up the following Tuesday in New Hampshire. Do whatever you can. Thanks. Bye.